Hi, welcome to HIP, your home improvement podcast by Lima Kitchens. This podcast explores topics to do with home renovations, updates, and kitchen design. Welcome to episode 10 of HIP, your home improvement podcast. Today I am joined with my business partner, Matt. Welcome.
Thank you.
So as most of you know, I work on the design side, so I get what's deemed as the more fun side of the project to work on. And Matt and his team are the people who make everything kind of work and come together.
We try our best.
Modest as ever. So what I think would be really interesting to discuss today is running of a project and the different terminology and the different ways in which we find clients manage their own project or have people working with them in terms of managing their project, and the different kind of expectations, which as ever feels like a really big topic and quite a lot to cover off at once.
And expectations, exactly that, are very broad and wide with different people. Quite a big field.
A huge field. So we'll try to start small and with the more kind of basic side of things and completely unrehearsed. So we'll see where this takes us, and then we can perhaps delve deeper in a later episode. So
sounds good.
Managing a project, what are the first things you think people need to be considering when they're taking on a project, be it a small change out of kitchen or a wider extension or renovation?
I think that our typical workload tends to be quite heavily project managed in itself, because if we've gone in and taken a kitchen out, organised all the electrics, the plumbing, the plastering, the installation of the kitchen, etc., we've kind of organised the majority of what's going on. So there isn't so much for a customer to worry about. We've kind of taken that hit as part of what we do. What's the worst the customer has to worry about? Where do I wash up? How am I going to wash my clothes if I've got no washing machine for a couple of weeks? That kind of thing. So that kind of setup isn't so bad. And I think we've got it pretty comfortable for them as part of what we do.
I mean, some of the things that we've offered in the past are loans of induction hobs to make healthy eating and not always having to go down to your fast food chains here in Milton Keynes, because that's basically what we've got.
It's nice to have a treat every now and again, but I think after 2 or 3 weeks, any takeaway gets pretty disappointing.
Yeah, indeed. So kind of being able to help with that setup. And one of the other things we aim to try to do as soon as possible is connect up the washing machine and help with that burden of the laundry building up and having to ask neighbours. And
the laundry tends to be the biggest worry that people have. That's the feedback we generally get. And we can do reasonably well at keeping it running a lot of the time. It's just a case of, have they got somewhere to put the machine whilst we're doing the work? Are we able to easily remove it and put it back again to allow things like flooring to happen? So washing machines, not too bad, but they are the most demanded item from the list. Washing up, lesser, but it can be pretty frustrating kneeling at the bath. That's a common feedback that we get.
Yeah.
It's not very comfortable. I think it's quite surprising how unfit for purpose washing up in a bath is once you're suddenly passing plates and knives and forks and glasses around. These things are quite easy to break in such a difficult space, or damage something. The hob, though, that we lend out, I think makes a big difference. Like you say, being able to have some normality, to be able to cook on a cooktop that's so easy, it just plugs in. I think everyone has said how easy it is to use. That makes a big difference. But where it gets more difficult, of course, is with the build. When you've got a lot of work going on, your home is not just disrupted in as much as you don't have a kitchen, but there's going to be a lot more dust. There's going to be a lot longer period without key function, such as the sink or the hob, the oven, that kind of thing. And it's in those circumstances where it starts to get more and more difficult to manage. A lot more involvement required from somebody to keep it all together, keep it on track, make sure that services are supplied temporarily, that kind of thing.
So when we're doing the projects, we know that budget obviously comes into it, as anyone who is looking at investing in their home. And one of the things we often have conversations around are some of the costs involved when we are organising those trades, and how sometimes they can be sought for less. In my opinion, we know the quality of the work that we're going to be providing and that it's going to meet a standard. And there is also a value in having someone else coordinating that, and you not having to be the person at the end of the phone when the plaster's dried too fast with it being hot at the moment, or it hasn't dried out, or they can't find the stopcock in the house and there's water going everywhere. And these disasters do happen. But generally taking that away and finding the solutions and having someone thinking of those solutions. Do you think that, in your experience of working with people who are managing that themselves and people who have handed it over to us, or on the rare occasions where someone's had a third party coordinating that, what do you see the benefits and the challenges being across those different setups?
I think that from experience, what's evident is that when people want to try and self-manage a project, that it becomes quite a heavy task, and they're probably trying to do a full-time job at the same time, which puts a lot of pressure on. And, we don't want pressure. We want to be able to feel comfortable that the works that are happening are organised and everything's going to plan. And if it's not, we're feeding back what it is. And having that person do that for you will make a huge difference to a project of any reasonable scale. If it was a straightforward couple of days work, it's not a big deal. But as soon as you start going beyond a week, I think that strain starts to be felt. And if it's going into 3, 4, 5, 6, even potentially longer, I mean, the longer it is, the more painful it is if you're trying to self-manage that. Ultimately, that's why we offer what we do. That's why we have people to look after our customers and give them those updates and keep them informed throughout the project and help solve problems. If the washing machine isn't reconnected or something to that effect, to have somebody there to chase up the right person to go and get that sorted out makes a big difference. And I think everyone that we speak to, once it's all been done and dusted, they really, really identify how much of a positive thing that was. Sometimes they don't see it during the project because there's a lot going on, and they're kind of wrapped up in that moment of disrupted household. But come the end of it, it's worth its weight in gold.
So would you say when you start to undertake these projects and in the emotion of them and things, would you say that people appreciate what the value is up front, or is it more of a hindsight thing that they see?
Well, a lot of the time it can be hindsight. I think this kind of depends. Maybe has that person, have they had it before? Have they experienced a larger project, home renovation project, thank you, lost my word, before? Because if they have, then they probably have already identified this, and then come the second time round, they know what they need to do. All too often, though, many people only do this once or twice in their lifetime, and it's not necessarily to a grand scale. The difference between a kitchen project in today's world versus 30 years ago is a massively different thing. It's a much more complex animal.
Even in the last 5-10 years, in the 19 years we've been going, if you consider how the level of detail we were given a few units on a, what they used to call back of a fag packet type drawing. It almost feels like when you look back today, whereas today we've got elevations, we've got plans, we've got lighting looms, we've got directions of floor flow, and it is a much, much bigger beast
the
than what
detail
it was.
that we're producing just for a standard project in comparison to when we first set up Lima Kitchens is phenomenal. And the demand for that information is without question. We're if anything, a builder's on the phone saying to their customer, we need this now. The customer's then on the phone to us, can you get these done? And there's a lot of pressure to get all the information that everybody needs at the right time. But we know it's in demand and we deliver.
So what would your kind of top tips be in making sure that you've got that information or identifying what that information is that you're going to need and essentially making the processes stress-free or keeping it low stress? What would those tips be? If
low stress sounds more realistic.
Lower stress, yeah.
I think we have a certain responsibility to guide people, and as long as people are take this on board and take our advice, I think we can help guide them to make sure that they're organised with this. And the sort of longer we've been in business and doing this, I think the better we are at guiding people. These days with customers completing larger build projects, they know that we need information. They need information, and we can provide it. They just obviously need to deal with their end of it to make sure the builder's on the same page as everyone else.
And how soon do you think people should start planning that process of supplying that information and obtaining the information that's required for their builders? How soon in advance would you say is a good kind of time span for them, for it to be a controlled project?
Generally speaking, the more time the better. I think 2 to 3 weeks is very fair to give that kind of notice. It gives us...
To the builder? 2 to 3 weeks to the builder?
Well, the problem with the builder, I think they operate on a 2 to 3 days kind of preparation, which is where the difficulties come in. We're operating 2 to 3 weeks. Everybody in between is working to the same kind of thing.
So you think 2 to 3 weeks in order to get that information together for the builder?
I think that's enough. If everybody's working to the same timescale, then that can be delivered.
And would you say that having a look at that once the build is in progress or looking before, in the projects that you've had, have you seen anything that's been distinctly different between people who have looked and got the majority of that started before the build started versus the fittings are in, the walls are going up? What have you seen in those types of projects?
In the larger scale projects where there's a lot going on, certainly to have more information in advance always is a more reliable approach. If you consider like a new build home is being constructed and an architect has done all the drawings and you've got all the information there, that information can then be updated ad hoc as the build goes through, and any sort of deviances because of complications when they dig the holes in the ground, who knows what they're going to find. Most of the time they probably go to plan, but there's always something. and that can always be updated. And because you've got that information, that basis to work from, it makes it so much easier to adjust and move forward, because all you're doing is taking already what you have, tweaking it, and everyone then moves forward with the new slightly modified plan. And we kind of operate in a similar way, but we're more focused on a kitchen or perhaps an internal downstairs refurbishment kind of thing. So I think the more preparation, the better.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who work off without a plan. We all know how that works out. So yeah, definitely more information up front is more control.
Okay, that's good. And what would you say is kind of underrated in people's opinions, areas that often get overlooked or don't have enough time spent in them in terms of consideration? What should people be thinking about more that they perhaps don't?
I think electrics is often, we go to a lot of trouble with electrics. Sometimes we go beyond expectations. We're asking questions about lighting positions and how are you going to switch it, and it's just not even on somebody's radar. But to have that information in advance, to have those drawings, somebody coming into that job, as an electrician often does, they're arriving on site. That's all they've got. They've got that and a conversation. And if that conversation can't happen because there's no one there to talk to, maybe the customer's busy working, that's quite common. Instead of being in a situation where they've got to kind of put it together as a bit of a makeshift guesswork, they've got a plan. So electrics is definitely an area that can be overlooked but easily fixed.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably one of the more significant ones. Can't think of any other in particular, but there are little things that can happen in any project which can be just a little bit missed, overlooked. They're not less intrusive on the general scheme of it, though.
Okay, and where do you think the biggest risks in home renovation are? Are there areas that you think tend to be more problematic? And if there are, how do you try to manage that situation?
The two biggest risks with projects that we're involved with tend to be building work and flooring. Building work, we do our best to address that. A builder to visit pre-start of works to check things out helps eliminate things, but until you actually open up the space you're going to work on, which you don't want to do in advance normally because you're probably trying to live there and not have great big holes in your home. But a pre-visit is a really effective way of trying to eliminate these things. Again, we have our structural engineer who helps cover these and tick these boxes in preparation. And again, flooring, until the old floor is removed, you don't know what's going to be there. So,
We've been caught out on flooring on a few occasions for that exact reason. You have no idea what you're going to uncover, what might be hiding underneath the top surface.
Exactly.
And
again, you can't really take some of it up to find out in advance because it doesn't really tell much of a story except for maybe that tile or that section. There could be something going on anywhere.
Leaks or holes or
long-term leaks.
Yeah, which aren't uncovered until it's fully exposed, unfortunately.
Exactly. So to try and alleviate that problem, you just get it up as early as you can in the project and assess it.
Okay. And then in terms of how projects have developed for you, you touched on it earlier we spoke about the plans being a lot, basic in comparison to what we do now. In terms of what people are asking for in a project, how has that developed and how do you see that continuing to evolve over the next few years?
Well, as appliances become more advanced, there's often more planning involved with that. For example, plumbed-in appliances. Traditionally, that's a dishwasher and a washing machine. Now you could be looking at condenser tumble dryers. You could be looking at steam ovens.
Coffee machines,
fridge freezers. So there's a lot more going on with appliances. Their electrical specifications are obviously a factor as well. So appliances are very important. The sort of more complex involvement in what's inside units and how they're affected by their surroundings, which again is interconnected with appliances a lot of the time, but could also be, physical factors within the kitchen space or living space. The Kalo, the
drink server, the open bottle drink server.
I mean, that's got to go somewhere, and it takes up room underneath. If you think how tall a bottle is, that's roughly how deep the item goes into the space below. You need room for it. You need airspace around it. It's a cooling appliance. It needs a little bit more room. So something like that, more to think about, more to plan, and it adds to the grand scheme of what needs to be considered.
Okay. Well, I think that kind of starts to bring us to the end of this episode. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just wondered if there's anything else you'd like to share in terms of what people might want to consider when they're undertaking a project to make it as stress-free as possible.
Well, initially, come to see us, obviously, and our team. And we obviously go to a lot of trouble and do the best that we can for people. But we're not alone out there.
There's plenty of people. We've got quite a good network.
There's a fantastic network of independent kitchen retailers across the country who take this level of care. So, we're
a good place to start.
We're a good place to start, but there's plenty of others who deliver the similar and same kind of level of service.
And we can always point you in the right direction.
More than happy to.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And look forward to you joining us again in the future.
Can't wait.
Thank you for joining us and listening to HIP, Your Home Improvement Podcast by Lima Kitchens. We hope you enjoyed the topics we discussed today. Feel free to hit like, share and subscribe to get details on further topics we will be discussing. If you have any topics you'd like us to address and talk about directly, please feel free to send them through. We'd love to hear from you.